Welcome to NRL 360 Rugby League from every angle, brought to you by the new Ranger plug-in hybrid. Joining me, the great Gordon Tallis. It's been the journos in, Buzz Rothfield and Brett Reid, and we have a very special guest, the CEO of the NRL, Andrew Abdo. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening.
It's been a busy old weekend for you, Andrew.
It has. It's been a busy couple of days.
Appreciate you coming on. What's been the NRL's driving or approach or driving force to this crackdown with the head eyes?
Let me first say, it hasn't been a crackdown at all. There's been no policy shift. It's been the game. It's always been illegal to tackle high, and we've been sin binning and penalising high tackles for the game going back decades. And we've been really consistent around this the last couple of years. We're not going to apologise or take a backward step for protecting players from head high shots. However, what I will say is that we've seen a couple of errors. We've seen a couple of judgment calls that perhaps weren't correct, and it was important to acknowledge that, take accountability for that, and we'll adjust, and hopefully we'll see improvements now in the weeks that follow.
So do you think that you got it wrong on the weekend?
I think there were some calls that were wrong. And look, we understand some of the frustration, particularly when the bunker intervenes in play a number of plays down the track. We can understand why there's frustration with that. The bar for that was always intended to be quite high. It needs to be serious or significant foul play for the bunker to intervene and to bin someone once the player's moved on. That's something that we want to work on with the referees.
How do we get that balance between the bunker and the referee? I think I'm okay if the referee does miss it. I don't like them going back 3 or 4 tackles, only on a scoring opportunity, of course. How do we get the balance?
Yeah, no one likes it. I think a good example of that is that interplay between the on-field referee and the bunker is the way we work around tries. So here, we back the on-field referee to make the call, and it's checked in the background by the bunker, and it works really well. It's quick. And they'll only intervene if it's an obvious no try. I think we need to think about how we empower the referees on field more. Of course, we have technology, we need to use it, but what we don't want is the play coming back, as I've said, and I think that's reserved for really serious, significant foul play, and it's probably been overused in the last couple of weeks.
I think it was about 18. Was it 18 sin bins on that? Are we seeing more head eyes? Are the players that ill-disciplined?
We've definitely seen an increase in head high tackles this season. So this time last year, so up to round 8, we had about 200 head high tackles. This year we've had about 379. So we've seen an increase. But it's different for each team. So some of the players and some of the teams are adapting better than others. There's some teams that haven't had a sin bin for a head high tackle this season. Some teams have only given away 3 penalties, others significantly more than that. So there's quite a lot of inconsistency around the way in which the players have been really disciplined about it. Now, we understand that from time to time there will be mitigation. And again, we want to make sure that the referees are empowered to act. They're looking for specific things. They're looking for force, but they're also looking for mitigation, and they get those calls right. And this weekend, there were some errors where that mitigation wasn't applied, and it goes both ways.
Andrew, I'd challenge you on saying there's been no crackdown, and I take your point that you're suggesting there's been more head-high tackles this year. I think the footy's very similar to what it was last year. And the bottom line is, and the statistics don't lie here, sin bins are up 140%. Reports are up 75%. And I hope you do understand, and look, I can totally understand you coming in here defending the people who work for you, but there is massive fan outrage out there about the officiating in the game around the sin binnings, and people think it is a crackdown.
Yeah, well, as I referred to earlier, Buzz, this is not about me being defensive or coming here saying there's nothing to see.
No,
we're taking
but I understand you.
Yeah, taking accountability for that. But coming back to your stats, but what I'm saying is there's over a 90% increase in the number of high tackles. And we're seeing a lot of inconsistency between the clubs as well, which means that I honestly believe there's a collective effort that's required here. And the accountability does sit with the game. It does sit with the officials too. But we also need everyone to pull together and make sure that we don't see a situation where we see, like we saw this weekend, a huge number of sin bins. None of us want to see penalties. None of us want to see sin bins. None of us want to see head-high tackles either. So there's a collective effort here.
I think the players do need to take accountability, but my concern is around this too, is that there were a number of penalties on the weekend for high contact when the players didn't even make eye contact, which to me suggests that the referees are really looking for it. They're looking to blow the penalties for high contact. When, as I said, there was at least 2 or 3 where there really wasn't much at all, if any.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you.
Yeah.
I've already said that I think there were a number of errors in applying the decision tree for what constitutes a sin bin, even potentially what constitutes a penalty. So we want to support the referees, make sure that they are using the indicators as a guideline. You know, there's things to look for in mitigation, and I think that needs to be taken into account. Similarly with level of force, we want to make sure that it's significant level of force and there's no mitigation before we go to a bin. And I completely agree that there were a number of calls that should not have been a sin bin. Equally, there were a few calls that weren't binned that probably should have been as well. So it goes both ways, and we want to keep getting better.
Andrew, the great concern is that Magic Round's going to be ruined by this. What assurances can you give the fans that that won't happen?
Well, I mean, I can never give assurances on anything, really. That's part of why we love professional sport, right? But what I can say is that we have listened. I can say that we review each and every match, each and every round, and we've looked at some of the errors that occurred this weekend, and we want to make sure that they don't get repeated. So I think that what you're going to see is definitely less intervention from the bunker when play has moved on. That threshold is really high, and I think you're going to see the referees applying mitigation more effectively.
So is that gone now? That won't come into play now, the bunker?
Well,
going back a few plays, like you said?
Only if it's significant or serious foul play.
And what's that?
So the bar is
that
really
a sin
high.
binning? Is that...
Could be a sin bin.
You mean, because in my era, but I've been retired for 20 years, like, if you went to the sin bin, you were sort of close to getting sent off or you're going to be suspended. Now...
Yeah, and I agree. And what we're saying is that bar is really high. So it's going to be a serious act of foul play, not necessarily a send-off, but it's going to be something that warrants play going back and the play being sin bin.
Andrew, I actually think the referees are doing a pretty good job, and they are not the problem in the game. I think the bunker is, and the inconsistency there, and different venues, different games, different interpretations. What can you do to get a higher level of consistency? The refs, the speed of the game, and they can't make these. They need those people with the high definition screens and slow-mo to make. How can you improve that?
Well, first of all, I agree with you. I think the on-field refs and the referees in general do a great job. I mean, we've had a fantastic season. Let's not lose sight of the fact that the game, the level of football, the players, the teams and the referees contribute to that has been phenomenal. We've got a game where on any given day anyone can win. The game is incredibly fast and entertaining. And I agree with you, Buzz, that the use of bunker technology, there are ways in which we can strive for. We'll never get full consistency because every tackle is different. Every tackle is different, and ultimately, even though they have technologies, they are humans making judgment calls, right, real time with a lot of pressure on them. But we can get better, and I think more specialisation in that role of using technology and better interplay between the on-field and the bunker, and the game providing more clarity around their parameters for what they can and can't rule on. So I think it's a combination of many things.
I was going to say, there's a simple answer is using less people in the bunker. I know you've reduced the amount you use. I think is it 4 you use now in the bunker? Is that right? Or have I got that wrong?
It depends on the weekend.
Yeah.
We are using less and trying to get more consistency in who is in that role. But it's not that easy. Obviously, we have 8 games every weekend.
Could you have specialist bunker officials? Is that a way a path you could go down?
Yeah, potentially. And the Commission, to their credit, pointed this out a while back around the need for us to provide specialisation, both in terms of training support and also the officials in there. And I think that is the way we're heading. So we are starting to see us using less and less officials in the bunker to hopefully get that, striving for that more consistent approach to how things are adjudicated.
Andrew, what's the feedback from the clubs or the coaches? Is it the speed of the game? Is there more fatigue? Are they frustrated with this?
Well, I think, everyone is frustrated by sin bins because they do impact the game. We're not getting any specific feedback, Gordy, from the clubs or the players on any one particular element. We kept the rules the same this year, and we've been pretty consistent the last 2 or 3 seasons. The speed of the game from year to year hasn't moved much. So ball in play, elapsed time, play the ball speed is pretty consistent year on year. But we have just seen this increase in head-out tackles, and we hope that it's just, something that'll phase out pretty quickly.
How does the NRL determine, and this is a tough one, the low, moderate and high force?
Yeah. So it's a judgment call, right? But there's some indicators there to help support the referee in making that call, particularly the referee in the bunker. And what you're looking for is you're looking for things like the speed of the defender, the speed of the attacker. You're looking for head movement and whiplash. You're looking for a player launching forward or perhaps being off both feet. All of these are indicators. There are tools available to help ultimately make a judgment call under pressure at speed and make a determination.
Foul play, and there was another incident on the weekend. Tupanua, Bulldogs, lifted his knee and attack. Terrible incident. Lucky he didn't break a jaw. He gets 2 weeks. The match review committee grade, he gets 2 weeks. I think that's insufficient. I'm wondering if harsher penalties for match review or judiciary would be a bigger deterrent. You're saying there's a record number of high tackles for coaches to emphasise more to their players. You've got to redirect your hits. And if they're facing a month on the, like they used to in the old days when there was a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it is, you would think, you know, time out of the game, losing a play in a game, losing a play for a number of weeks afterwards, these are big deterrents. But we were talking earlier about this, and I want to re-emphasise that some of the players and some of the teams are doing this really well. They've adapted incredibly well and have very, very low counts of sin bins. Some teams haven't had any sin bins this year. Some teams have had very, very low levels of penalties for high tackles. So we've seen some teams adapt and be a lot more disciplined, and I think that they will be at a significant advantage. Because again, while, you know, we're not going to take a backward step on player safety, we can get better in eliminating some of these errors, and we want to make sure that we catch all the important ones. But ultimately, the teams that adapt are going to do better over the course of the season.
Andrew, are sin bins the solution? Even you said that it is hurting the game and the spectacle to a degree. Should we leave it more to the MRC, or is there a different solution than just sin bins?
Oh, look, there's always ways in which we can think about getting better and finding different solutions, and that'll happen. We do this at the end of every season, where we, you know, obviously consult with everyone in the game and those that have great experience to contribute to ways in which we can come up with solutions. But, you know, I think any contact sport has to have accountability in the game for serious foul play. And losing a player, I don't see our sport moving away from the impact of that. Take, for instance, we're talking a lot about a player who's binned, but what about the player who's hit high illegally, gets taken off for a head injury assessment, is out of the game for 15 minutes, their team has lost that player. I think there needs to be a counterbalance and a disincentive to foul play.
So what
it's about getting that bar right.
Of course, and a responsibility is for the player and the coaches as well. So what accountability do they need to take, and do they need to work harder on what they do?
I think it's a collective effort. I mean, I think we obviously need to do our bit to make sure that there's clarity, and the referees need to make sure that they're applying it consistently, and the communication, the feedback back to the teams, the clubs and the players, it's a collective effort. And, you know, ultimately we don't really want to be talking about this. We don't want to be talking about officials, we don't want to be talking about administrators, we're talking about the footy. And again, we've had some unbelievable games, and I think we're going to have a cracking weekend this
That's what I wrote this morning, Andrew. Las Vegas, the euphoria, and Fremont Street.
You went quite high this morning, mate.
The stadium. Yeah, well, you know, I identified a few issues that needed to be addressed, I thought, but it just seemed so long ago, and I hate seeing or getting so many text messages over the weekend from disgruntled fans. And I hated listening to Joey Johns yesterday, an immortal of the game, speak in the manner in which he did, and I really, really do hope you can fix it for Magic Round.
Can I just say that we get it? Like you know, we're not tone deaf, and we understand the frustration, and we'll continue to work on it. My point is just it's a collective accountability, and player safety is important.
Andrew, Wayne had an idea I think it was Wayne Bennett's idea in the pre-season, where if you hit someone high, the player would go off for a HIA. I think if they stayed off, then the player who committed the act would then have to go in the sin bin. Why wasn't that? That was trialled, I think, in the pre-season. Is that right?
Yeah, we did trial the pre-season. That'll be reviewed and looked at the end of the season. You know, there's pros and cons to any system, Brent. And I suppose one of the things is that we need to consider is not all tackles result in an injury. It's more about the risk of the injury. Sometimes you can get lucky and you can have a terrible act of foul play and the player just gets up and is unscathed. Sometimes it's a fairly innocuous thing. So I think it's more about the risk of injury than the actual injury. But, you know, I understand we need to think about different ways of tackling this problem.
Before we let the CEO go, you two have got anything else for him? You got a whole list of...
I would not like to ask you about the playing schedule. I don't think it's fair for a number of reasons, and I said this morning, 6 clubs don't have any 5-day turnarounds. Cronulla and Brisbane have 3. Rehab after 40 games is so important, and you know, if you can get a longer break, you get an advantage. And I don't cop these double-up games. So many double-ups in the first 10 weeks. That's all I got to whinge about.
So it's a fair, it's a fair comment. A couple of things. One is the draw on the schedule is one of the most complex things that we do. Number one. Number two, it's not created equal for everyone. Certainly, some teams travel more than others. The 5-day turnarounds, the stadium availability. Also, importantly, Buzz, and sometimes the fans don't realise that we're also working hard to provide, for example, Saturday afternoon footy or Sunday afternoon footy for teams, so they're not just playing on Thursday nights or Friday nights. So there's a range of factors in there. But what I will say is we do need to get better at it. With the advent of artificial intelligence and technology, I think we're going to see improvements going forward. And I think expansion and moving to 18 teams and beyond provides us an opportunity to look at the season structure differently and perhaps be able to tackle the fixture list in a better way than we've done in previous years.
You mentioned expansion. I've got to ask you about Perth, the Perth Bears, or the WA Bears, whatever they're going to be called. When do you think you'll be in position to announce that, formally announce something?
I don't know when we'll be in a position to finalise it and have it formally announced, but it is exciting that we are talking about expansion. And clearly Western Australia is a great market for us. You know, when the Western Reds were firing, we had 16,000 registered participants. So it's a great opportunity for us in terms of a national blueprint. Very exciting opportunity, and hopefully we were able to finalise something that adds a lot of value to the game and the business case stacks up, and we're certainly heading in the right direction.
Well, Andrew, we really appreciate you coming in. You've shown great leadership again, taking this head on and coming in face to face and giving us great clarification on a number of issues in our game, so we appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks,
Thanks, mate.
All right, and you played Buzz off a break too.